Hey guys, so today we're going to focus more on rational numbers and we're going to continue our work from where we left off yesterday. Today we're going to focus on adding rational numbers. And before we really get into how we're going to add, we're going to just give you guys some tips on ways that we can use different things that'll help us when we're adding rational numbers. So to get things started, there are several tips and tricks to help you remember how to add rational numbers. The first tip, you can use symbols to represent a positive and negative number. So in here, we're going to write positive and negative. So yesterday we talked about additive inverses and what those are and how we use additive inverses. And we're going to actually use some symbols that are going to show additive inverse. So over here I have the problem -4 plus 7. So to show this, I'm going to actually go through and show negative and positive symbols. So I am going to make -4. So I'm just going to make little like chips almost. So I'm going to put a negative symbol inside a circle. This is showing that I have four negative chips. And then I'm going to make positive chips. I'm going to do that just by putting a plus sign inside the circle as well. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So in order to solve this, I'm going to make groups. I'm going to make additive inverses. Remember, if I have a positive and a negative, those kind of cancel each other out and make 0. So if I do this, I'm going to cross out one negative and one positive, and those would cancel out to 0. Another positive and negative, another one, and then I've got one more. That leaves me with just 3 positive chips. So then my answer, when I have -4 plus positive 7, that's going to leave me with a positive 3 because I've got these 3 positive chips here. Okay. Now I can do the same thing. I'm going to lose my video here so you guys have more space to see. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Now I start with 6 negative chips. So I'm going to make my 6 negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negative. And then I'm adding to that 4 negative. So I'm going to add my 4 negative chips. Okay, so now since I don't have positive and negative ones to cancel out, I'd really just look at how many I have. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 negative. So what this is going to be is just -10 because I have 10 negative chips. Okay, let's take a look at our second tip. Our second tip says that you can use the following phrase to help you. If it's the same, you add. If it's different, you subtract. Okay, so same you add, different you subtract. You're going to hear us say that a lot as we are working with our positive and negative numbers. All right, so this is the one, this is the tip that we're going to use a lot for larger numbers and rational numbers. So I'm going to put a little note here. So this is going to be best for large numbers and rational. All right, so we are going to first look at our signs. So in this first example, 8 plus -2. We have to look, do we have the same sign or do we have different signs? In this case, we have different signs. Our 8 is positive, our -2 is negative. So since we have different signs, we are going to subtract. So I'm just going to write that up here. Okay, so when I subtract, I am going to look, I'm just going to subtract the numerical parts. So I'm going to be looking at more like the absolute values of the number, just the numerical. And I also want to figure out first, is my answer going to be positive or negative? When we are adding, our answer will have the sign of the larger numerical, or larger number, like the numerical part. So I'm going to look at +8 and -2. 8 is bigger than 2, and 8 is positive. So my answer is going to be positive. So this is going to be a positive answer. And since, as I said, I have a positive and a negative, I'm going to subtract. So to solve this, I'm going to do 8 minus 2, which would equal 6. And since the 8 is positive and it has the larger number, my answer is going to be positive. So that's going to be +6. And remember, we subtracted because we had different signs. Okay, and then in my next one, I have -2 plus -5. So now we have the same signs. And since we have the same signs, remember, same you add, so I'm going to be adding for this problem. And I still want to look, though, the larger numerical is -5 because my 5 is bigger than 2. So my answer is going to be negative. Okay, so then I just have my 2 plus 5, which gives me 7. So -2 plus -5 gives me -7. So again, when the sign is the same, we're going to add. If the signs are different, we subtract. Okay, so this is going to bring me down to my third tip. And our third tip, or our third trick here, is that you can always draw or create a number line. To help us solve the problem. So we will create a number line. We choose the numbers that we put on it. So we need to make sure that it makes sense for our specific problem. We need to make sure we have numbers that go from small enough to big enough to incorporate our problem. And we're going to start at the first number in the problem. We're going to put a dot to help you remember your starting point. Then we're going to decide which direction you are going. If you are adding a positive number, so the second number is positive, then we move that many spaces to the right. Right, we're going to the right. So again, if we are adding a positive number, we move to the right. If we are adding a negative number, our second number is negative, then we move that many spaces to the left. So we are going this way. And whatever number you land on after moving is your answer. Okay, so we're going to do a couple examples so that we can see how this works. All right, so we have -8 plus -5. Okay, so my second number is negative, so this means I'm going to move to the left, and I'm just going to draw my number line. So I need to make sure I include my -8. And since I'm starting at -8 and I'm moving to the left, I'm going to put my -8 somewhere over here. So I'm actually going to start with like -7, -8. I'm just going to fill in my numbers on the number line here. And hopefully you guys can read this okay. I know it's harder to write with these tools. All right, and I just want to make sure that I have enough numbers to incorporate my answer. And this should be more than enough. So I'm going to put a dot, remember, on my first number, my -8. So I'm going to put my dot here. And this is where I'm starting. And since I am adding a negative number, that means I'm moving to the left, I'm just going to move to the left 5 spaces. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is where I am going to end. And that is my answer. That's where I end. So -8 plus -5 is -13. Okay, so let's try another one. I'm going to change colors just so these don't overlap or run into each other. Now we're starting with -2. So I know on my number line, I need to make sure I'm starting at -2. And then I am adding 5. That is a +5. So positive means I'm going to the right. Since I'm going to be moving to the right, I'm going to put my -2 down here closer to the left. So I'm going to start with -3 and I'm going to start counting up. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and go up to 4. Okay, so again, I'm going to start at -2, so I'm going to put my dot on -2, and I'm going to move 5 spaces to the right. So I'm going to jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is where I'm ending right here. So -2 plus 5 equals +3. And I can even put a little positive sign here just so we see that that is definitely +3. Okay, let's go ahead and flip our notes over to the back, and we'll take this a little bit further. Okay, so when we are adding, so we gave you some tips and tricks. Now these are the actual steps that we're going to use when we are adding rational numbers. We are going to look at our signs, right? If they are the same, what do we say? The same, you add. If they are different, you subtract. Then we're going to add and subtract normally, how we normally would, and give your answer the sign of the number with the larger numerical value. Okay. And what do you have more of, positives or negatives? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at which number has the larger numerical value. So let's do some practice examples here. We are going to start with 5 plus -4. Okay, first we want to look at our signs. Since we have 2 different signs, we have a positive and a negative. Different means we subtract. So I'm going to write that on here. Different equals subtract. So the first thing I'm going to do is just subtract 5 minus 4, which gives me 1. And then I have to look back at my original numbers. Which one has the larger numerical value? 5 or 4? 5 has the larger numerical value. It's positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. So 5 plus -4 is going to give me an answer of +1. Okay, let's take a look at our next problem. Now we have some rational numbers. We have some decimals. So we're looking again, what are the signs of our 2 numbers? We have -33 and 72/100ths and +57 and 5/10ths. So they have different signs. So again, different means subtract. So I'm just going to set this up as a subtraction sentence. I'm going to start with my number with the larger numerical value, and that larger numerical value is +57 and 5/10ths. That's positive, so that also tells us our answer is going to be positive. So we're going to start with that number. I'm going to write 57 and 5/10ths, and I am going to subtract from that 33 and 72/100ths. Now, since these decimals are not the same length, I'm going to add a 0 up here instead of 5/10ths. Now it's 50/100ths. And now I'm going to subtract. Remember, anytime you add or subtract and you have decimals, you need to make sure you're lining up your decimal points. Okay, so now when I go to subtract, I can't take 2 from 0, so I do have to borrow. 10 minus 2 is just 8. I can't take 7 from 4, so I'm going to make that 14 and borrow again. 14 minus 7 is 7. Just bring down my decimal point. 6 minus 3 is 3, and 5 minus 3 is 2. So my answer, I get 23 and 78 hundredths. And remember, I said that was going to be positive because the larger numerical value was positive. So my answer is going to be positive 23 and 78 hundredths. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at our next example. Our next example, we have fractions, and I'm going to show this two ways. I know some of you like to convert your mixed numbers to improper fractions and then add or subtract, and some of you just like to find a common denominator and leave them as mixed numbers. So we're going to show this in two different ways just so you can see both. That way, whichever one you prefer, you can do. I do want you to write both methods down on your notes though, so you have both to go from. So again, I want to look at my two numbers here, right? I want to look for the one with the larger numerical value. 5.5 is bigger than 3 3/4. So my answer is going to be negative. Now, if I look, I actually have the same signs. They're both negative. So when we have the same signs, we add. So since I have the same signs, I'm going to add together negative 5 1/2 and negative 3 3/4. So I'm going to start that. I'm just going to rewrite my problem. Negative 5 1/2 plus negative 3 3/4. When I add, I need to make sure that I have a common denominator. So I want to look at the two that I have, my two denominators, and I see that I have a 2 and a 4. I can multiply my 1/2. I can multiply my 1 and my 2 both by 2 to convert that to fourths. So this would change into, my fraction part would be 5 2/4 plus 3 3/4. And if you notice, I dropped the signs off just so I don't have to worry about those right now. I'll put those back into my answer. Remember, we said since they're the same and we're adding and they're both negatives, my answer is going to be negative. So now I just want to focus on the fractions themselves. I'm going to add my fractions together. 2/4 and 3/4 would give me 5/4, and 5 plus 3 is 8. So now I have 8 and 5/4. Well, 5/4 is actually an improper fraction, so I need to convert that back. 5/4 is equal to 1 and 1/4. So I want to add my 8 to my 1 and 1/4, and that's going to give me 9 and 1/4. And then once I look at that, I also need to make that negative because I said my answer is going to be negative. So this is negative 9 and 1/4. So that is my final answer. Okay, now again, I said we might want to convert to improper fractions. So instead of writing negative 5 1/2 plus 3 3/4, I want to change those fractions to improper fractions by doing bottom times the whole plus the top. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So I'm starting with 11 halves, plus 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15 fourths. Now, I still have to find a common denominator, so I still want to change my 11 halves to fourths. And again, I'll just multiply my numerator and denominator by 2. That means this is going to be 22 fourths plus 15 fourths. Then I add my numerators. 22 plus 15 is 37, and that's fourths. And then I just want to convert that back to a mixed number. So I need to know how many times does 4 go into 37. It goes in 9 times with a remainder of 1, which means my answer is going to be 9 and 1/4. And again, we want to make that negative because both of my starting numbers were negative and the number with the larger numerical value is negative. So my answer there, we get the same answer, negative 9 and 1/4. Okay, let's take a look over here at our last example. It says a submarine sits 501/2 feet below the surface of the water. It dives down 45 1/4 feet more. What rational number represents the submarine's current depth? Okay, so first of all, I need to look at what these values mean. 501.5 feet below the surface of water. That means that is going to be negative. That's below sea level. So that's going to be negative 501.5 plus, and it says it dives down 45 1/4 feet more. So if I'm diving down further, that's going to also be negative. So that's negative 45 1/4. So again, I want to look at this. Since I have the same signs, same equals add. So I want to add these two together. Again, since I have fractions, I'm going to show this both ways. I'm going to scroll down a little just so we have some more space. All right, so first I'm just going to add my mixed numbers. So I have negative 501.5, which I want to change to fourths. So I'm going to write that as 2/4 plus negative 45 1/4. Okay, so now I want to add my fractions, right? 2/4 and 1/4 is just 3/4. And then 545 added together is 545. And again, since we have the same signs, right? We added those together, and my larger numerical value is 500.5, right? And that is negative, so my answer is negative 545 3/4. Okay, so again, I can change those mixed numbers to improper fractions. Remember, bottom times the whole plus the top. 4 times 500, or sorry, we want to start with our halves. So I'm going to convert this. 500 times 2 is 1,000 plus 1 is going to give us 1,001 halves plus 45 times 4 is 180 plus 1 is 181 fourths. So again, I need a common denominator. 1,001 halves. An equivalent ratio with a denominator of 4 would be 2,002 fourths, because I'm just going to multiply both numbers by 2. And that would be plus 181 fourths. And 2,002 plus 181 is going to be 2,183 fourths. And when I convert that back into a mixed number, 4 goes into 2,183 545 times with 3 left over. So that would give us our 3/4. And again, my answer is going to be negative because my larger numerical value was negative. So negative 545 3/4. We got the same answer as we did there. All right, so next you guys are going to complete an activity in Google Slides. You're going to go ahead and type your answers into the Google Slides from Google Classroom. It'll make you your own copy, and you'll just type right into the slides. I hope this made sense. If you have any questions, we will come back to this and we'll continue working on adding rational numbers.